Alone at night, she felt a hand grab her, the incredible words that changed her life forever. Jenna stumbled through the dimly lit parking lot, her heart heavy with the weight of another long shift at the diner. The rain poured down, soaking her hair, but she barely noticed. The world around her blurred, and the chill seeped into her bones. Then, out of nowhere, a rough hand clamped down on her shoulder. Her heart raced, panic flooding her senses as she spun around. What the? It was Carlos, his haunted eyes wide with a mix of fear and desperation. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." His voice trembled, and Jenna felt a wave of empathy wash over her. He was a veteran, someone known around town, but rarely spoken of in kind terms. The rumors swirled: PTSD, violence, instability. Yet in that moment, all she saw was a fellow soul reaching out from a lonely darkness. "This town ain't easy," Jenna whispered, her voice softer now, trying to bridge the gap that divided them. And so, under the flickering fluorescent light, through the rain-soaked air, they began to share their stories, two lives intertwined by community but separated by the weight of judgment. Carlos spoke of nights filled with silence, lost family, and battles that raged in his head, while Jenna recounted fights with bills and the heartbreaking loneliness of motherhood. Tears glimmered in her eyes as she spoke of Tommy, her 10-year-old son, the light of her life, taken by the burdens of poverty as they bare their souls. It dawned on Jenna that each of them carried the silent scars of abandonment. She from her father who disappeared when she needed him most, and Carlos from a family fractured by the invisible wounds of war. They both lived under the critical eyes of their neighbors, defined by what they each lacked in the eyes of the small Midwestern town. Yet together, they could hear the faint sound of hope blooming beneath the pain. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The connection between them grew stronger as they met each day. They became each other's anchors, a refuge from the tempest of rumors that crashed around them. Every conversation was an act of defiance against the social norms that kept them apart. Just when Jenna felt they had begun to carve their place in the community, they learned that a town meeting was scheduled to address stagnant wages and opportunity to press against the whispers in that packed auditorium. Jenna watched as Carlos gathered his courage, stepping toward the microphone. The whispers faded into uncertainty, and the air charged with possibility. It was their moment to raise their voices, to change not just their futures, but those of countless others who felt unseen. As Carlos took a deep breath, Jenna's heart raced with pride, fear, and hope. What revelation would spill from his lips? Would they finally be heard, or would the harsh judgments of the town drown them out? Those seconds felt longer than an eternity. The silence electrified the air, anticipation hanging heavy, then drifted as Carlos began to speak. Would his words ignite change, or would the town's whispers swallow them whole? Carlos gripped the microphone tightly, his knuckles whitening under the pressure. The room grew still, the expectant crowd a mix of faces familiar and foreign. The buzz of uncertainty hung thick like smoke. Jenna held her breath, willing him to find the strength to voice not only his pain but hers, too. "I want to talk about how we've been living," he began, his voice shaky but rising with determination. "About the wages that don't match our hard work, about bills piling up, about staring at empty plates while our families go hungry." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jenna felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. "No one chooses this life," Carlos continued, locking eyes with a couple in the back who nodded knowingly. "We fight our own battles every damn day, whether it's the monsters in our heads or the ones outside in our wallets." He paused, and for a brief moment, Jenna saw the walls that had surrounded him start to crumble, giving way to the raw vulnerability and strength within. It's not just my story, he said, his voice rising with passion. It's ours. Every single person in this room is struggling. I see you, the single moms, the factory workers, the veterans, we're all carrying this burden. We need to stand together. The crowd murmured louder now, encouraged by his words. Jenna felt her pulse quicken as other voices began to join in. One by one, they shared their own stories of resilience, heartbreak, and dreams crushed under the weight of expectations. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she listened, realizing she was no longer alone in her fight. Their collective grief turned into an anthem of unity, but then a familiar voice shattered through the newfound energy. It was Lloyd, the mayor, stepping up with a frown etched across his face. We understand there are concerns, he said, raising a hand to silence the crowd. But we cannot allow emotion to dictate our policy decisions. There are proper channels for that. This is not the place to. Jenna felt a surge of anger rise within her. And when is it the right place, Lloyd? She shouted, surprising even herself. When are we allowed to be more than your statistics? When will our lives matter? Gasps echoed around her, a moment caught in time. The mayor's glare hardened as he dismissed her with a wave. This is not a debate, but it was more than a debate. It was the fight of their lives. Jenna's heart pounded like a war drum, urging courage through her veins. She could feel the weight of expectation pushing down on her shoulders, and yet she stepped forward, joining Carlos at the front. We deserve a chance, Jenna implored, her voice ringing with clarity. We can't just keep working harder for less. We need our town to see us, to hear us. Her body trembled with energy. Fear transformed into fierce resolve. The crowd erupted. Other voices swelled into a chorus of agreement. It was a relentless tide of passion, a wave that couldn't be halted. But with that surge came uncertainty. Could they actually make a difference? Would these words resonate beyond this moment? Jenna glanced at Carlos, who mirrored her apprehension but wore a mask of hopeful tenacity. As they stood together, a sense of empowerment flooded Jenna's heart, yet gut-wrenching doubt loomed, daring to undermine it. Would this be a turning point, or yet another moment lost in whispers? With the crowd rallying behind them, they were on the brink of something monumental. It couldn't just end here. What would happen next? Would they have the strength to keep pushing when it got harder? The air crackled with possibility, but shadows danced around the edges of their shared resolve, ready to challenge their newfound power. Jenna's heart raced, the rawness of their shared stories still echoing in her mind. She stood next to Carlos, feeling the heat of the crowd like a living organism, each heartbeat a testament to their struggle. It was intoxicating and terrifying. The mayor's dismissive wave still stung, but it only fueled her resolve. Together, we can change this, Carlos shouted, his voice booming above the murmurs. We fight for our futures, not just for ourselves, but for our children, our families. We've got to hold them accountable. That simple phrase sent a ripple through the crowd. Suddenly, it wasn't just Carlos and Jenna at the forefront. It was every tired face, every weary soul who felt invisible. They rallied, rising to something raw and powerful, each voice amplifying the last, a symphony of demands that filled the hall like joyous music. The energy in the room shifted. Jenna noticed a woman in the front row, tears streaming down her face, shaking her head as if unearthing memories of a painful past. And beside her stood a young man, fists clenched, jaw set firmly in determination. Fight with us. We're more than just votes. Someone shouted, and a spontaneous chant began to form. We will not be silenced. We will not be forgotten. Carlos lifted his hands, urging them on. Let them hear us. Let the town know we are here. His confidence sparked a fire in Jenna. She felt a light pulse through her veins, urging her to surrender herself to the moment. This could be a turning point. As the air thickened with passion, Jenna whispered a silent prayer. She found the courage to step closer to the forefront, feeling the weight of the collective hope surrounding her. Then it happened. Carla, a woman from their neighborhood, stepped forward to share her story. I lost my job last year, and I'm a single mother. I had to rely on food banks just to feed my kids. I'm here, but I feel invisible, just a face in the crowd." Her shaky voice laced the words with pain that resonated deeply with everyone. Jenna felt the wave of empathy crash against her, the collective heartbreak folding together, forming a fragile cocoon of understanding. They weren't just sharing words. They were pouring out their souls, shedding the armor rusted from years of struggle. Every day, Carla continued, "I tell my kids to dream big, but I feel like I'm crushing their dreams because I can't provide for them." The room fell silent, the weight of her fear and vulnerability hanging heavy in the air. Jenna glanced around. Tears glistened on countless cheeks. In that moment, they weren't just a crowd. They were a community built on interconnected stories, each one told with the tenderness of shared trauma. Carlos grabbed his second microphone, urgency flashing in his eyes. "We need to take our stories to the streets. We need to march a demonstration. Shall we show them what it means to fight for our future?" "Yes, yes." The crowd roared in unison, energy flowing like electricity. Jenna felt herself becoming part of something monumental. It wasn't just words anymore. It was a mission, an unstoppable force building momentum. But doubt flickered in the back of her mind. They had to pull together, and most importantly, they must stand united. But before she could share her thoughts, a voice cut through the air, filled with dread. "You don't understand what you're asking for." It came from Lloyd, the mayor's reaction sharpening the moment. "You'll lose everything." Jenna turned to Carlos, both of them freezing in the chaos as reality gripped them. "So what do we do now?" She wondered, an inflammatory question that lingered between them, hanging like a cliffhanger over the room. But as eyes filled with determination and fear stared back at them, she knew the answer wasn't yet clear. What would it mean to step into this fight? And more importantly, would they know where to go from here? Carlos took a deep breath, scanning the anxious faces in the crowd, searching for an anchor in the storm. "We can't give up," he shouted, a fire igniting in his voice. "This is our moment to rise, to be seen and heard. Yes, there will be risks, but what is the alternative? Living in silence?" A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. Jenna felt it, the warm buzz of shared hope and fear. "We've struggled too long," she shouted, her own voice getting lost amid the chorus. "Are we ready to fight for our future?" "Yes." The roar that followed was thunderous. Jenna's heart lifted as the weight of their struggles transformed into determination. But Lloyd's words still clung to the air, thick with a warning. Would they lose everything? Imagine facing the repercussions of their uprising. They had families, children, jobs. What if speaking up put it all at risk? The thought lingered like a shadow in the back of Jenna's mind. She saw Carla, the woman who spoke earlier. Carla's chin quivered, her eyes locked with Jenna's. "What if we can't?" she whispered, voicing the unspoken terror. "What if we can't?" Jenna shot back, urgency lacing her voice. "We have to take that leap, even if it scares us." As Carlos rallied the crowd again, Jenna felt the stir of energy swaying her. It was more than just a protest. It was a declaration of existence, a promise to stand united. "We need to know how many will take to the streets with us." Carlos continued, his passion like a flame reaching for the sky. Hands began to rise, one after another. Jenna lifted her own, driven by the surge of shared vulnerability around her. Each hand was a commitment, a small light ignited in the collective darkness they faced. Behind Carlos, a steel-faced woman stepped up. Jenna recognized her from community meetings. "I can't stay silent anymore," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "We're not looking for permission. We're demanding our rights. We deserve a life of dignity." The crowd erupted again, voices entwining into a powerful anthem. It was overwhelming but necessary. Jenna's throat tightened with emotion. The rawness of it all made her want to weep. Then she saw Lloyd, standing apart with a furrowed brow, frustration etched onto his face. He couldn't see what they were creating, but she understood the fear of loss was sometimes more tangible than the hope of gain. and that realization made her heart ache. What would it take to help him see? "Attention," Jenna called out, raising her voice above the noise. The murmurs slowed, and a stillness fell over the crowd. "If we march, we struggle together. Our strength is our unity, but we also have to be prepared for what that means. There will be challenges. Then let us face them together." Someone shouted from the back, and a cheer followed. That was it. This crowd was ready. They might stumble, they might fall, but together they would rise. "Let us spread this message," Carlos rallied once more. "Social media, flyers, word of mouth. We need people to understand our mission. Are we ready to spread the word?" A thunderous response echoed through the room. Yes. And with that, Jenna felt the pulse of the movement start to give rhythm to her thoughts. This was more than a fight for existence. It was a fight for identity. They had enough of hiding. They were worthy of a voice. As they began to plan the details, Jenna's mind was racing. There was a sensation of growing anticipation in her chest. Each moment held the promise of transformation, not just for their lives, but for their entire community. But in the midst of that hope, doubt began to creep back in. What would happen when they took those first steps? When they put everything on the line? Would they shatter under the pressure? She caught Carlos's eye. The determination in his gaze steadied her. They wouldn't let fear win. But what if it did? What if everything changed again? There was a quick flash of regrettable silence before it burst into new conversations. And in the distance, something else was brewing, a deeper challenge that they had not yet considered. Would they be strong enough to face the fallout of their newfound courage? As the crowd buzzed with excitement, Jenna felt the weight of their collective decision settling upon her. Plans were forming, but amidst the euphoria, a sense of urgency thrummed through her veins. She needed to reach Lloyd, to break through the fortress of his doubts. "Carlos," she said, her voice more a whisper now, "can you hold the crowd while I talk to someone?" He nodded, already engaging with a group near the front, answering questions and stoking their zest. She glanced back at the sea of faces, fueled by hope, and then stepped away, her heart pounding with every step towards Lloyd. He stood apart, arms crossed, his shoulders tense. There was a storm inside him, and she yearned to calm it. "Lloyd," she began, breathless, "I know you're scared. I am too, but we can't let it stop us." He met her gaze, but his expression didn't soften. "You think this is going to change anything? You think speaking up is going to magically fix everything?" "It's not magic," she replied, earnestness breaking through her anxiety. "It's courage. It's about showing up for ourselves and our kids. They deserve a future where they can be proud, where they're not intimidated into silence." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "And if it all backfires? What about our jobs? What about everything we've built? You think we're just going to stand there while they take it all away?" Jenna felt a lump in her throat. His fear felt so real, like a weight she was carrying too. "I know it's hard, but look around. We're not alone in this. They're putting their hands up, willing to stand with us. We have a chance to write a different story, one where we don't live in fear. Isn't that worth the risk?" Lloyd's eyes flickered with uncertainty. She could sense the struggle within him. "What if you fail? What if we all fail?" "Failing is part of fighting," she urged, standing a bit taller. "And standing in silence? That's a defeat we already know too well. We need to choose to fight for the chance of something better." For a moment, an almost imperceptible silence hung in the air. Fear battled with a flickering spark of hope. She saw his brows tense, his heart wrestling with the weight of their decision. Then Jenna heard Carlos's booming voice draw the crowd back in. "Let us get organized. We need teams for logistics, people to spread the word. Together, we're unstoppable." They were gathering strength, every shout igniting more courage. It was a reminder that even if Lloyd couldn't see it yet, they were becoming something bigger than their fears. "Please, Lloyd," she said, her voice shaking with the urgency of her plea. "Stand with us. Stand with me. We could do this together." He looked at her then, the barrier around him crumbling bit by bit. But before he could respond, a sudden commotion erupted from the side of the crowd. Jenna turned her head, heart racing, as another figure emerged from the shadows just beyond their gathering. A man was rushing toward them, his expression fierce and desperate. "They're coming," he shouted. Eyes wild, a ripple of panic surged through the crowd. Jenna felt her stomach drop. "Who is coming?" Someone cried out from the rear. "What do you mean?" But Jenna's mind was racing. Whatever threat was looming now, it was here sooner than they'd anticipated, and it was about to change everything. "Stay calm," Carlos shouted, but hope seemed to flicker like a candle in the wind now. What was coming meant the battle was now, not later. Would their unity hold against this unforeseen storm, or would fear drive them back into the shadows from where they fought so hard to emerge? Jenna's heart thundered in her chest as she scanned the crowd, the sounds of whispers and hushed gasps overwhelming her senses. The man who had burst into their gathering, his wild eyes wide with urgency, cut through her thoughts like a knife. She caught snippets of panic intermingled with confusion in the thrumming air. "Stay together," she shouted, feeling a surge of authority. "Whatever is coming, we face it together." Lloyd, still locked in his internal struggle, finally broke his gaze from her. He turned to the chaos, his arms dropping from their defensive posture. "What do they want?" he demanded, his voice booming over the frantic whispers of the crowd. The man took a shaky breath, trying to collect himself. Then he began, but his words caught in his throat. "They don't want you to speak out. They want to silence us." A low murmur traveled through the group, an undercurrent of fear mixing with anger. Jenna felt Lloyd stiffen beside her, his uncertainty morphing into resolve. "Listen, everyone," Jenna called out, raising her voice to pierce through the growing panic. "We won't let anyone intimidate us into silence. If they want to come for us, let them come. We have to stand strong. We owe it to everyone who believes in this fight." A ripple of approval surged through the crowd, an ember of courage igniting. She glanced at Carlos, who nodded encouragingly, rallying a few near the front. She could feel the collective breath of their shared determination overshadowing the fear. Just then, a group emerged from the shadows, their faces shrouded in hooded jackets, advancing quickly but methodically. The fears that had hung in the air morphed into a palpable tension. Jenna's heart pounded as she assessed them. They looked organized, purposeful, and undeniably unsettling. "Who are they?" Lloyd asked, his expression shifting from fear to steely resolve as the crowd began to part slightly, anxiety palpable in the atmosphere. "I don't know," Jenna replied, though the urgency to defend their stand surged within her. "But we are not backing down." The leading figure among the approaching group raised a hand, signaling for silence. Jenna's breath caught. There was power even in that gesture. "Enough," he shouted. "This gathering is unlawful. It disrupts the peace we fought to maintain. You have to disperse immediately." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Jenna felt a wave of defiance swell within her. "No," she yelled back, her voice ringing with conviction. "We will not be silenced. We're here for our community, for our future." "Jenna," Lloyd's voice was a warning, but she couldn't look away from the intruders' icy stares, their confidence unrelenting. "Back down, or we'll take action," the leader replied, his tone devoid of empathy. A silence followed, thick and oppressive, as the tensions mounted. Jenna turned back to the crowd, eyes wide with urgency. "This is what we feared. They think we'll give up. We need to make them see we are united. This fight is important." With that, Carlos stepped forward. "We're done hiding. Whoever you are, we're not afraid to stand for what we believe in." In that moment, with all eyes on her, an unexpected surge of adrenaline coursed through Jenna. The urgency hit her like a wave. They had a choice to make, and the time for decision was upon them. Would they fight for their voices, or allow the darkness to swallow them whole? Jenna met Lloyd's gaze, a newfound strength igniting between them. "We stand together," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else, as the distance closed between their two groups. Then, in the midst of it all, words unexpectedly spilled from her lips, words she had practiced in her heart, but never spoken aloud. "Here's what you don't understand. The noise you hear isn't just a crowd. It's the sound of our hearts beating as one. As the crowd began to rally behind her, Jenna felt the tide turning. Would their unity hold against this new threat, or would they find themselves swallowed in a fight for a future they all desperately wanted? The figure leading the opposing group took a step forward, his shadow falling over Jenna like a dark omen. The crowd pressed in closer, hungry for resolution but unsure of their power. Jenna could feel the tension coiling tightly around them, like a spring ready to snap. She was acutely aware of each breath, each heartbeat, and the fear lurking behind those defiant faces around her. "Do you even understand what you're doing?" The leader barked, his voice echoing through the gathering. "You're forcing us to act." Jenna stood tall, her heart racing. "And what action is that?" She shot back. "More intimidation? More silence? You could try, but you won't succeed." Lloyd moved closer, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. "We're not just going to back down," he added, his voice steady despite the chaos. "You're outnumbered." A flicker of uncertainty crossed the leader's features, but he quickly masked it. "Numbers mean nothing if they're just sheep." His words dripped with disdain. "You'll all learn the hard way what happens when you resist." The crowd stirred, an undercurrent of doubt rising as some glances shifted towards the ground. Jenna noticed the worry in Carlos's eyes, and instinctively, she reached for his hand, squeezing it tight. "We are not sheep," Jenna declared, raising her chin defiantly, channeling that collective fear into something powerful. "We are the voices of this community, and we want to be silenced." Someone in the crowd shouted, "You're scared of us." And the energy shifted again. This time, an echo of strength reverberated back, unfurling once more among the onlookers. "Strength in numbers," someone else echoed, raising a clenched fist into the air. More rallied behind, shouting affirmations and united cries that rang out like a bell reminders of their shared humanity. With a determined push, the leader took another step closer. "Throwing words around won't protect you," he hissed. "You don't know what you're asking for." Jenna felt the prickling of fear brushing against her resolve, her mind racing in search of the right words. Then she realized the truth. "But that isn't it?" she exclaimed, capturing the attention of the gang of intruders. "You want to intimidate us into silence, afraid of what we might say, afraid of our unity. But we want to let fear rule us." The crowd responded with a refrain of cheers, hearts ignited by boldness. Jenna felt it, the pulsing wave of collective courage, a force reborn in that moment of defiance. "Stand for what's right," Carlos shouted, emboldened by Jenna's words. The leader's eyes narrowed, narrowing in on Jenna. "You really think you're special? You think your voices matter in the grand scheme of things? This is just a temporary game." The boiling tension in the air was palpable, a mix of anger and defiance threatening to spill over. Jenna's chest tightened, adrenaline coursing steadily through her veins. She had to hold on to this moment, to keep that fire alive. "Listen to me," she cried, her voice gaining volume, drawing every ear. "What you see as a game is our lives, our futures. We stand for each other. Every voice counts. Together, we are unshakable." The crowd erupted in supportive cheers, waves of encouragement washing through them, and Jenna felt that electric connection binding them all. But beneath that unity lay the threat looming just outside their endurance. What would happen if they truly called the intruders bluff? What consequences would there be? The leader's insistent gaze cut through her thoughts. Behind him, the other hooded figures shifted, an unsettling resolve painting their faces as Jenna prepared to stand her ground. The question weighed heavily in the air. Would they hold their ground against the darkness, or were they merely igniting a spark that would lead to greater conflict? Suddenly, the leader raised his hand again, this time fingers curled into a signal. "Then so be it. You've chosen your path." But we're not the only ones watching. Jenna's heart sank. The revelation loomed over them like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. Who else was watching, and what would the next move be? A sense of dread began to creep in, shaping the horizon of their fight for freedom. The stakes were higher now than ever before, and the unfolding chaos was just beginning. Jenna's heart thundered her chest. The leader's signal was more than just a gesture. It felt like a summons, a stirring of threats, yet unspoken. She could see the tension in the faces of her friends, the uncertainty mingling with determination. The crowd's shouts echoed around them, but all she could focus on was the oppressive weight of their situation. "What do we do now?" Lloyd asked, his voice laced with urgency, leaning closer so only she could hear. "We keep standing together," Jenna replied. The conviction in her voice surprised even herself. It was harder now, as a new fear snaked its way into her mind. "We can't let them see us falter." Suddenly, a roar filled the air. From the edges of the crowd, a figure burst through, panic striving to steal the moment. "They're coming. They're coming this way." The newcomer's voice cracked, urgency palpable. Eyes widened, glances flickered from face to face. Jenna felt her stomach drop. Her thoughts raced back to the leader's warning. Who else was watching? What did that mean? "Stay calm," Jenna called out, though doubt crept into her own heart. "We stand together, remember?" The crowd hesitated, shifting like the tide. Flashes of eyes met Jenna's as people weighed their options. Would they follow her lead or succumb to fear? Lloyd squeezed her hand tighter. "You're right, Jenna. We can't lose hope." But above them, the dark sky seemed to deepen, casting an even heavier shadow over the gathering. The sense of impending doom dripped into the atmosphere like rain. With a sudden crack, lightning split the sky, illuminating the leader's twisted smile just before thunder rolled in the distance. "Hope," he sneered, stepping closer, the crowd parting in trepidation. "Hope won't save you when you're surrounded by wolves." A murmur rippled through the crowd, parts of them wanting to flee. The air felt charged, like a balloon stretched to its limit. Jenna caught sight of some familiar faces wavering, glancing over their shoulders, eyes darting to the exits. A lump formed in her throat. She couldn't let panic take root. "This is our moment," Jenna shouted, her voice fierce, cutting through the rumblings of despair. "We face whatever comes next together, or we live in chains, afraid and broken." Cheers responded, but they were tinged with uncertainty. Jenna sensed the fear starting to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of defiance. Together, they could push through, but as a low growl rose from the shadows, followed by the rustle of leaves, the atmosphere shifted again. "What is coming?" she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. "Is it them?" Lloyd's voice trembled. Then they emerged. Dark figures stepped out from the thickening fog. More than just the leader's crew, their silhouettes menacing in the shimmering darkness. The atmosphere shifted. The threat was real. Jenna's breath hitched as the crowd gasped, the wolves closing in. Fear and uncertainty clashed with her burning urge to lead, and she realized the truth: they were not ready for this battle. But then a spark of resolve ignited inside her. "We can't run," she shouted, placing herself at the forefront. "We hold the power. Together, we can fight back." Around her, the crowd stirred once again, steeling themselves against the approaching figures, grasping each other's hands, summoning a collective will. But just as they prepared to stand their ground, a piercing howl echoed through the night, chilling their very souls. "What was that?" Carlos asked, eyes wide with fear that a part of Jenna wanted to retreat, the instinct to protect her own crying out. Yet, the thought of retreating made her heart ache even more. "We fight for unity," she charged, though the wolf's howl continued to ring in her ears, mixing with the thunder. "Will they fight with us?" she thought, swirling dread clawing at her. Would hope be enough? As the dark figures moved closer, it felt like the moment of truth was finally upon them, but also a crossroads that could lead to either freedom or disaster. "Are we ready?" she whispered to herself, bracing for what was about to unfold. And down the road, another truth skated dangerously close, just out of reach. What if this night changed everything, forever? The air grew heavier, a sensation that pressed down on Jenna like a lead weight. The howling grew closer, mixing with the distant rumble of thunder. She could feel her heart racing, yet she tried to appear calm, drawing from the courage that had ignited moments before. The shadows of the dark figures loomed larger, their intentions unreadable. "Stay together. Stay strong," she shouted over the din, her words echoing into the fog. She turned to face Lloyd, who stood beside her, jaw clenched and expression firm. He held his ground as their friends rallied around them, gripping each other tightly. But just as Jenna felt the stirrings of hope survive under the weight of fear, the wolves broke free from the darkness. They charged into the clearing, fierce and primal, their eyes gleaming with hunger. The crowd gasped collectively, a chorus of startled breaths and fragmented cries. "Look out!" someone yelled, prompting shouts of confusion and fear as some people began to pull back. The unity that Jenna had fought to maintain threatened to unravel before her eyes. "Don't panic." Jenna's voice rose, firm but slice by slice fraying at the edges. Weakened, a shape darted forward from a group, a figure wearing a cloak that billowed like smoke. They lunged towards Jenna and Lloyd, arms stretched wide. In one swift motion, the figure plunged deep into the crowd, sweeping those closest behind them as they shielded Jenna. For a moment, everything stood still. "Let us go," the figure shouted, urgency rippling through the crowd like a shockwave. It was the leader's voice, cutting through the chaos, commanding and authoritative. Instead of retreating, something inside Jenna snapped. An instinctive surge of bravery crashed over her. "Stand your ground," she yelled, voice steady, a spark lighting her eyes, igniting flickers of courage in others. The crowd hesitated, torn between flight and fight, and then a stirring arrived. A few feet shifted, shoulders straightening, hearts beginning to beat with resolute hope. Then the cloaked figure tore the mask off, its face a face she recognized. It was one of the lost ones, someone they had thought taken or worse. "We can't be afraid," the figure shouted, words like bullets piercing the air. "Together, fight for each other." With a crescendo, the fog seemed to lift just an inch, revealing the faces of those around them, friends, neighbors, and those they had fought for. Jenna took a shaky breath, feeling the heat of fear fizzling into rage instead. They would not let despair swallow them whole. "The wolves aren't just coming for us. They're coming to tear apart everything we built." Jenna roared above the rising chaos. "We stand strong, not as individuals, but as family. Fears can only divide us. Together, we become unstoppable." The crowd, roused as if awakening from a trance, began to chant her words. A rhythm built within them, gathering strength. "Together, together, together." Jenna felt invigorated. With each echo of their unity, it washed away the fears that clung to them like fog. Yet, just then, a loud crash boomed through the crowd, and from behind them, more figures emerged, not just wolves, but shadows of despair and darkness that threatened to consume them all. "Do you hear that?" Lloyd whispered, his voice a mix of awe and dread. "We're outnumbered." "Maybe," Jenna replied, steeling herself. "But we have something they don't, a bond stronger than fear." As the shadows lunged forward, Jenna felt an energy coursing through her, the realization that they could be the light, igniting hope against the encroaching darkness. "Yes," she yelled, gripping Lloyd's hand tight. "Right here, right now, we change everything." They moved as one, a wave of resolution crashing towards the approaching threat. But before they could surge forward, the howls pierced again, and Jenna's heart raced at what still lay beyond in the fog. What lay behind the shadows that had yet to step into the light? "Are we truly ready?" Jenna thought, the question igniting fear yet again. Just then, an unexpected figure shot forward, and with it came a revelation that could change everything. The figure broke through the chaos, the dim light illuminating their identity. Tommy, Jenna's son. His small frame stood resolute, eyes wide and bright, radiating innocence mixed with fierce determination. "Mom," he shouted above the thunder. "You can't let them win. Fight with all your heart." Jenna's breath caught. Her son was at the heart of this storm, bolstered by the power of love and community. "Tommy, stay back," she cried, fear wrestling with a swell of pride deep within her. But he shook his head, mirroring the strength of those around him. "No, this is our fight, too." His voice rang out, a beacon piercing the fog of apprehension. Heart pounding, Jenna realized that Tommy wasn't afraid. He was emboldened by the spirit of unity that had been ignited. The shadows lunged forward, but the crowd behind her surged in response, mired in a determination that swirled like a hurricane. Together, Jenna yelled, extending her free hand toward Tommy. We shield our future. In a heartbeat, the community closed ranks, arms linked, shoulders squared. The thunder of their united voices roared against the encroaching darkness. We are not afraid. We are not alone, they shouted, a river of newfound courage and resilience sweeping through the crowd and crashing against the growing threat. Jenna turned to Carlos, who stood with a fierce expression, the flames of rebellious hope lighting up his eyes. This is our moment, he declared, shoulder to shoulder with the shaking but resolute figures around them. The crowd echoed the sentiment, a surge of energy coursing through them as they held fast together. Let us push them back, shouted someone in the throng, as the tension coiled around them like an electric current, ready to spark. The faces around Jenna were flushed, determined, fierce, and suddenly she could feel the power of change pulsing through their veins. Then, as if in a synchronized leap, they surged forward, the tide rising with each shout, each heartbeat aligned with purpose. For our families, for our joy, someone cried, and the resolve echoed back, overwhelming the dark figures now just on the fringe of the crowd noise. Now, we take back what is ours, Jenna roared, stepping with Tommy firmly in front of her, trusting the power of their bond and the strength of everyone around her. Together, they charged a wave of humanity, pushing against the looming shadows. As they closed the distance, Jenna felt a rush, a flood of emotion leading to solidarity that was deeper than anything she'd experienced. Fear shifted to empowerment, the uncertainty melting into unyielding trust. But then a flash passed through the air, and the leader of the dark figures raised his arm again, shouting above the tumult. You think this is just a game? You're outmatched. His voice dripped with venom, but it only fueled the fire within the gathering. No, Jenna bellowed, her voice strong and unwavering. You underestimated our hearts. You've made a grave mistake. In that moment, she realized that the battle had never been about numbers. It was about unity, the indomitable spirit of community. And together they carried the weight of their shared pain, turning it into strength. What if it is just beginnings? She wondered, echoing back to her heart's desire for a brighter future. Suddenly, the energy shifted. The hooded figures, locked in their postures of intimidation, hesitated as the rallying voices fractured their resolve. The chant grew stronger, the crowd surging like a tidal wave. We stand as one. We stand together. And then it happened. With one final push, their force clashed against the darkness. It was a powerful moment of realization, a pivot point. The figures faltered, shaken by the sheer volume of willpower in the chaos. As the wolves began to back down, Jenna caught sight of Lloyd, his face illuminated by the strength he had found among them. The realization of his participation was a turning tide, and it stoked the flame that had flickered in their hearts. They all mattered in this fight. This was a battle for every single one of them. Don't give up. This is just the beginning, Jenna cried, feeling that the collective breath was tightening, each heartbeat sinking closer to a rhythm of victory. As cheers erupted around her, Jenna felt tears filling her eyes. Joy and fear intermingled as moments of doubt fractured into sparks of determination. They could do this. The wolves saw the power of humanity standing strong, and one by one, they began to retreat. Victory flowed through the air like a sweet fragrance. The darkness that once loomed so large began to recede, their howls fading like echoes against the growing warmth of shared solidarity. Standing beside Tommy, Jenna clasped his hand tightly, feeling him squeeze back an anchor in the storm. They all mattered here. They would carry this moment forward, lighting the path toward change. We have a voice, Jenna shouted, rising above the shouts of joy and laughter. Let us take it into the next day. Let us be heard beyond this night. As the community united, the crowd erupted into enthusiastic chatter about the future, not just a fight, but a promise. They would take this momentum and fuel it into something beautiful, cohesive, something transformative, and it would all start from this moment. Remember this, everyone, Carlos added, raising an arm. We're not defined by our struggles, but how we choose to rise against them. And with that, an echo of hope flashed as they dispersed, united and ready to take on the challenges ahead, fueled by the revelations born from their deepest fears and lifted by their profound love for one another. Jenna took a deep breath, heart swelling with pride. Life in their small town had shifted forever, hearts hardened against despair and ready to embrace the dawn of something brighter. And it was only just beginning. Now's the time for you to join this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that celebrate resilience. Leave a like now to help spread this transformative message, and comment below your thoughts and feelings about this ending. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this story of empowerment. Don't wait, not even one more second. Your support is crucial. This is the moment to show your commitment.